I'm on a mission like a couple spies, and that, guys, is the reason why I catechize.
Welcome to the Reformed Standard. I'm Tony. Let's get started. Question 17 of the Westminster Larger Catechism reads, how did God create man? Answer, after God had made all other creatures, he created man male and female, formed the body of man of the dust of the ground and the woman of the rib of the man, endued them with living, reasonable, and immortal souls, made them after his own image, in knowledge, righteousness, and holiness, having the law of God written on their hearts and the power to fulfill it, and dominion over the creatures, yet subject to fall. So this question, as I mentioned in our last episode, is contrasted with question 16, which is about how God created the angels. And as I mentioned before, there's a particular focus in God's decrees, according to the Catechism, on angels and men. And then we see that the Catechism has an even more particular focus on man, which just reflects the scriptural emphasis. And so question 17 here includes angels with the other creatures. So there's a distinction between angels and humans. So we look at creation, and there's kind of two categories. There's everything made in the image of God, and then there's every other thing made not in the image of God, which basically means that man is unique in all of creation. It also goes on here to say that he created man male and female, which obviously has implications for debates and discussions in our day. I don't think that I need to tease those out too much. And then it goes on here, and this is where I think the Catechism starts to get more specific. And this is where I think we should recognize that certain kinds of creation theology are not in alignment with the Westminster Confession, and that doesn't just apply to like atheistic accounts of origins. So forming the body of the man of the dust in the ground and the woman of the rib of the man. The Catechism here is essentially saying that the account in Genesis 2, the account that we have of the creation of Adam and Eve, is historical. If it's not historical, then this question doesn't make sense. And so this is a restrictive statement that it excludes any idea of theistic evolution that doesn't involve a de novo creation of Adam and Eve. It excludes the sort of ensouled ape hypothesis where evolution plugs along until a certain level, and then God indues a soul into a particular pair of hominids or a community of hominids. Instead, this creation of man from the dust and the creation of the woman from the rib of the man is a historical, unique act, miraculous act of divine intervention. It's not God sort of co-opting a natural process. It's not God waiting for something to happen that he can use. It's God taking things that are not living, taking dust from the ground that is not living, and making a man, and taking the rib of a man, which cannot be reproduced naturally into another person, right? No matter what we do, we're never going to take a rib out of someone's side and create a woman. And even in instances where we were to be able to somehow scientifically take that rib and clone it out to be a full human, which is science fiction, but even if we got there, that rib would still be a duplicate of that man. But instead, God takes the rib and forms it into something new and something different. And after he does that, he gives these two, after in logical order, he gives these two living, reasonable, and immortal souls. So we talked a little bit about the different kinds of immortality. We're not talking about inherent immortality, but God grants immortality to the creature here, in that he sustains and upholds them from ceasing to exist. So all things that are creaturely tend towards non-existence unless upheld by their creator. And so when he grants these souls are created in such a way that they are immortal, meaning that they cannot die or cannot be killed. Obviously, God could cause something not to exist, but in terms of the natural order of things, there's nothing that can destroy the human soul in terms of annihilation, which even right here at the beginning in the creation, the protology section of the Catechism, we see things like annihilationism excluded. These souls are reasonable and they're living, so man is created in a way that is not unrational, is not irrational. So again, we're excluding the sort of ensouled ape hypothesis or something along those lines. And this is contrasted with the angels, who are created immortal but are created excelling in knowledge. It's not to say that they're irrational, but the rational, reasonable soul is something that, at least in the Catechism here, is not said of the angels, which I think is interesting. And then here's kind of the frosting on the cake, or the sort of the culmination of everything, is he made them after his own image. And the Catechism goes on here to sort of include what that means in knowledge, righteousness, and holiness. So we often think about the image of God, and we think about different aspects of it. Is it our ability to speak? Is it our ability to rationalize? Is it our ability to love? All of those things are possible, and the Catechism here doesn't exclude them. But it does say here, and it restricts, or it specifies that what it means by made after the image of God is that we're made in knowledge, meaning we have knowledge of our Creator. We're made in righteousness, meaning that we are legally in covenant with God. We'll get to that a little bit later in the Catechism. But we're in the first humans were in a positive, legally just relationship with God. And then we get to holiness, which means that the creatures were set apart. They were set apart for a purpose. They were set apart by God for a specific purpose. And the holiness here is important because it's set apart, but it's also a distinctness from the rest of creation. So again, the angels are said to be elect. They're said to be immortal. But at least in the Catechism here, they're not said to be holy. And I'm not aware of anywhere in the Scripture that necessarily speaks of angels in this way. And so the angels are on one side of the line with the creatures, and the humans are on the other side of the line as the Imago Dei. So it creates this sort of threefold reality. You have the creature-creator distinction, right? And God's on one side of that, and everything else is on the other. But then you have the Imago Dei, non-Imago Dei distinction, where humans are on one side and all of the other creatures are on that side. And this isn't a hierarchy of being or a scale of being or a gradation of being, but it does create this threefold reality that there are three kinds of entities in the universe. There's creatures that are not in the image of God, there's the image of God, which is only found in man, and then there is God himself. And it's interesting because humans sort of split the difference in some ways. We're not God, we're not creators, but we're created in the image of the Creator. But we're also creatures in that we were also made from the dust of the ground. And so here's the last part that I want to talk about. Is we have the fact that humans were created with the law of God written on their heart and the power to fulfill it. Humans were not created in some helpless state. Sometimes we think about it and we think, well, Adam couldn't help but have fallen. But that's really not the case. Roman Catholicism argues that Adam was created in a state with something called concupiscence, which is a tendency towards sin. And without God's super added grace, or without God's super added governance, he would not have been able to maintain his righteous status. And so for them, the problem of sin is not a matter of transgression of a law. It is that, but that's not the origin of it. But it's an actual fault or an actual issue with the constitution of humans as they were created. And what the Catechism here is saying is pushing that to the side, is saying absolutely not. Instead, it's saying that humans not only knew what was expected of them, they knew the law of God. They knew not just the verbal command that they were to not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but they were to maintain God's moral law. They were to maintain the Ten Commandments, which was a later summary of the moral law. And they had the ability to do it. And so we read that, and this is sort of the tragedy of the Bible, which will be undone and made right in the eschaton, is that although they had the law of God written on their heart, and they had the power to fulfill it, they had the task of reigning over the earth and with dominion over the creatures, they were subject to fall. And we'll get later in the Catechism, we'll get into the details of that. But already here in the Catechism, there's kind of this tension that although they were created in this state of original integrity and original righteousness, they were still subject to fall.
Do you know, if you want, you could know this? The Catechism, hey, the Catechism, hey. Do you know what the chief and the man is? And how the Father, Son, and Spirit do manage? Do you know, if you want, you could know?
West Side.